Please confirm.
Hi everyone, I am Dr. Ola Mihalec. I'm a social scientist based in Bristol Cybersecurity Research Group. I study people who make security happen. So in other words, security practitioners and experts. They could be based in consultancies, government. I research how security expertise evolves over time. Cybersecurity is a new field. As you learned in the last lecture, the internet wasn't originally built for security. It used to be a small network of university computers, a small trusted networks of computers back in the 1960s. Now the modern so-called best practices of security, so how we use our passwords, how often we patch, how we report vulnerabilities, they all had to be agreed upon over time by the groups of experts and users who have stakes in our computer systems. And deciding on the best way forward is not a straightforward task, because security needed to be negotiated against other software requirements, be it privacy, safety, or usability. But it's not all about software requirements. We also need to take into account people's priorities. So maybe they want to save money, and maybe they want to protect their reputation, or maybe they have huge risk appetite. And similarly, what we consider best practices in security changes over time as we learn more about how people interact with technologies and how technologies advance themselves. But other than security experts, there are many other interesting types of people involved in cybersecurity. So in this video, I will tell you about 3 categories of people relevant to cyber. First of all, hackers, so those who break into systems, box tickers, so those who are supposed to protect them but not always successfully, and noobs, those without digital skills. So bear in mind, I am being a little bit facetious here. I want to illustrate to you that stereotypes can be very powerful but also quite dangerous. Stereotypes are powerful for building a sense of group identity, but ultimately they shortcuts in thinking, which means that they encourage making assumptions about others, and they also encourage gatekeeping of expertise because they suggest this is what, for example, a computer scientist looks like and does in their spare time. So the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. I bet each one of you is more than simply a computer science student, and each one of you has multiple layers to you that you want to present to the world. So with that in mind, how can we think better about people involved in cybersecurity? First, let's start with hackers, or representations of digitally skilled people in the popular culture and academia. Gabriella Coleman is an anthropologist of hacker culture, which extends beyond breaking into computers. She's interested in how communities of digital enthusiasts collaborate on software and advocate for political values for example, through open source projects. In her article entitled From Internet Farming to Weapons of the Geek, Coleman is tracing how come hackers went from obscure tinkerers to internationally known political actors like Anonymous or Edward Snowden. Coleman identified craft as one of the key attributes of modern hackers. She says, technologists are quintessential craftspeople driven by the pursuit of quality and excellence. The hacker adds something more into the mix, a fastidious and explicit impulse for craftiness. To improve and secure computer technologies, hackers approach solutions not only with technical know-how and ability, but also with some degree of agility, guile, or even disrespect. To quote an effective description offered by a security hacker during an interview, you have to have an innate understanding that technology is arbitrary. It's an arbitrary mechanism that does something that is unnatural, and therefore it can be always circumvented in all likelihood. Second attribute identified by Coleman is the autonomous mindset. And then again to quote, Perhaps unsurprisingly, another characteristic that might be identified as common to hackers is a dodged anti-authoritarianism, which manifests itself as a profound skepticism toward institutions and other forms of entrenched power. While it might be tempting to see it as a merely another journalistic cliche, this attitude is genuinely encoded deeply in the hacker cultural DNA. It is apparent in their flippant casual conversation, as it is in their manifestos, zines, and text files. So, as you are yourselves in your third year of your degrees, I suspect that neither of these quotes came as a surprise to you. However, the real value of the work of anthropologists or scholars who study culture is finding the collective dimension of humankind, and particularly when it comes to hacking or computer software, the pursuit of craft and autonomy. They often seem like individual traits, but Coleman argues that this is the collective practices and spaces which truly build hackers' identity. So be it conferences, message boards, open source projects, or hackathons. Only by meeting like-minded people, hackers realize that collectively they can form resistance in the current political climate of state surveillance and invasive tracking. And now I've got an idea of an exercise for you, again to discuss during your Q&A session or throughout the week with your course mates. So I'd like you to critique some pop culture hacker characters.
I want to know what's on that computer.
Now, looking at Silver's computer, it seems to me he's done a number of slightly unusual things.
Rebecca was the first, just as you thought. The second, MH, is Mary Holmberry, a prostitute in Kalmar, murdered in 1954, matching Leviticus 20:18.
What do you like about them? In what ways are they relatable? In what ways are they stereotyped? How would you improve them as characters? How would you give them more dimensions? What do we know about how they relate and collaborate with others? Now, you might think that recalling popular films and books seems like a fun activity for a university course, not entirely serious, but let me assure you that how we represent hackers matters a lot. In her paper, 50 Shades of Hacking, How IT and Cybersecurity Industry Perceive Good, Bad and Former Hackers, Leonie Tanzer precisely accounts for this historical shift from basement enthusiasts to well-paid and corporate professionals. She argues that this skillful movement between describing themselves as ethical or criminal, autonomous or collective, and humorous to businesslike allowed security experts to establish professional identity. So security experts are never either of these things. They are very good at being flexible and being in this grey zone between, good or bad or ethical and unethical. So this movement from hackers to professionals is a nice segue to the second part of the talk, namely about security box stickers. So we have already established that hackers don't reside in basements anymore, and many of them swapped hoodies for suits. But can we look for some diversity within security community? Are there multiple types of paid professional security experts? So I call this section box sticker as a reference to the work by an anthropologist, David Graeber, called Bullshit Jobs. David Graeber introduces tongue-in-cheek typology of contemporary professions to highlight that many companies don't offer fulfilling, interesting or contributing roles. And so box stickers is a rather uncharitable way to call it a job when someone creates this appearance that something is useful, but nothing useful is being done. And security and privacy in corporations sometimes, unfortunately, reduce to compliance, which is a prime example of the box ticking. Similarly, security professionals can sometimes be notorious of introducing complex but completely useless measures like very arcane authentication or quite restrictive access management, which end up being rejected once applied in real life. However, chances are that if you end up as a security professional, you won't be a box ticker. Fingers crossed for you. Our PhD student, Colin Topping, who spent decades in the industry before moving on to academia, neatly describes this evolution of IT security professionals, comparing them to different types of dogs. And so Colin argues, those with the old-fashioned view of us would probably conjure up the image of a guard dog, probably a Doberman or an Alsatian snarling and refusing entry. This is an important role of security today and is still relevant when we look at access control. So guard dogs create an appearance of power and security, but often do it so in a forceful way. Therefore, they are unlikely to be popular with colleagues. Next, Colin recalls the image of a hunting dog, perhaps some who work in security research. He then writes, threat hunters attempt to find that needle in a haystack using known indicators of compromise, or more impressively by undertaking log analysis and looking for the unusual. Then the third role is of a rescue dog, someone akin to Saint Bernard in the Swiss Alps, except that in this instant the security professional is having to deal with the consequences of a successful compromise, be it WannaCry in the NHS, for example, or the Colonial Pipeline attack. The whole future of businesses might be dependent on those rescue dog type professionals and the ability to respond decisively. And here I bet that many security professionals would like to view themselves this way as rescue dogs or heroes. While the rescue hero is noble, we need to consider what happens if an organization is dependent on the same hero again and again to rescue us from the same issues occurring periodically. So should we instead focus on making our computer systems better in the first place and our whole teams more skilled, so that there is no need for individual and quite often very expensive heroes? Finally, Colin argues that security professionals nowadays should be more like guide dogs, promoting cybersecurity skills and awareness across the whole business and linking cybersecurity threats to the risks relevant to us, like loss of money or loss of dignity or outages in services. Security professionals should be embedded in broader operational concerns rather than locked away as sole technical experts. After all, security is both a social and a technical concept. The final part of this talk is concerned with people who traditionally were not involved in creating security solutions or tools, but were and are still very much affected by security. So just like with box stickers, I am being a little bit flippant here when using the term noob, so please do not take offense. Noobs or newbies are those new to a particular area, often without any valuable skills. The term itself is a slang, very popular in computing, as I am sure you already know, and traditionally used in a derogatory way. However, as you are learning throughout this module, there is no shame in not having skills. Users are not the enemy, and there is nothing wrong with being a noob. So we should constantly be questioning who should be digitally skilled. Why and how should people gain skills? Although the overall computing proficiency in the society might be increasing, we need to accept that not all populations will be capable of becoming digitally skilled anytime soon. So let's think about the elderly, those without frequent access to computers, children, or people with disabilities. Should we blame them for security errors? Or should we say that they are rather underserved populations who haven't received enough attention from software developers? So this argument goes beyond the types of underserved populations and actually extends to the context in which we use digital technologies. We need to question the possibility of always being aware of security and compliant with the correct use of passwords, data backups for disclosing information, People might be under pressure or multitasking or only willing to use the most convenient way to access information. So we need to go beyond security awareness and understand people's concerns. If anything, this is the core message of the course. And if there is a guiding principle in your careers, there is no point designing secure digital systems, rules, or apps if your target audience won't use them and instead they will go for workaround which fits their lifestyles. And if you want to get a little bit more political, you might want to question why our lives are so busy in the first place and how can we challenge this. So good luck if you decide to do that. So that's it from me. It was great to speak to you about people and security, and I hope this topic will prompt some reflections and interesting discussions. As always, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I also attached a reading list with lots of recommendations, podcasts, videos, and books. Until next time, bye bye!